Odessa, 1941. A vital Soviet port city. Encircled by over 300,000 Axis troops. Bombarded from the air and sea. Outnumbered. Outgunned. And worst of all, nearly out of tanks. Inside the city, Soviet engineers had two options: surrender or improvise. What they built looked absurd. Clunky farm tractors, covered in boilerplate, outfitted with scrap metal turrets. No armor. Often no guns. Just noise, lights, and fear. But when these makeshift tanks rolled out under cover of night, an entire Romanian division broke and ran. This isn't a tale of brute force. This is a story of psychological warfare, desperation, and raw ingenuity. Where underdogs used illusion to punch far above their weight, and almost change the outcome of a siege. They weren't supposed to survive this long. In August 1941, Odessa was under siege. As Hitler's armies pushed deep into Soviet territory, Romanian forces were ordered to capture the port and claim it for the Axis. They expected it to fall in a few days. Instead, it held for 72 days. Why? Because every soldier, factory worker, and civilian inside Odessa turned the city into a fortress. Trenches were dug in parks. Schools became barracks. And factories that once made tools now forged weapons. But tanks? Tanks were a different story. Almost all armored units had been withdrawn. Only a few broken-down machines remained. That's when the idea was born. They didn't build tanks. They built fear. At the January Uprising machine plant, engineers examined the STZ-5, a basic farm tractor with no combat use. Slow. Loud. Exposed. But it could move. And it had treads. They began welding scrap metal and boilerplate around the chassis. Mounted machine guns if available, or simply fake barrels made from steel pipes. They created rotating turrets from old steel drums. They even painted camouflage patterns and red stars to complete the illusion. What emerged was not a tank, but something that looked like one. From a distance, at night, under chaos, it might be enough. They called them night tanks, naspug, meaning for fright. These weren't tools of destruction. They were instruments of deception. Steel, sweat, and no room for failure. A former welder recalled working 18-hour shifts, dodging air raids while hammering together crude armor. Teenagers served as runners between parts bins. Women welded steel under blackout curtains. One tank was assembled in a single night, using parts salvaged from 3 destroyed machines. They had no blueprints. No margin for error. But what they had was purpose. When the first 3 NI tanks rolled through the courtyard, one worker whispered, "If it fools us, it'll fool them." Sirens on. Lights blazing. And the enemy running. September 20th, 1941. 20 NI tanks roll out toward Romanian lines just before dawn. Sirens wail. Headlights blaze through the fog. Infantry follows behind, yelling war cries and firing in the air. Romanian troops, groggy from night watch, see what looks like a Soviet armored assault. No one has time to confirm, they just react. Some units break ranks immediately. Others fire, then retreat when they see their bullets bounce. What they don't realize, they're not seeing armor. They're seeing illusion. The Romanians abandoned positions, and the Soviets reclaimed ground. It wasn't a victory of strength. It was a victory of fear. The trick kept working. Over the next 2 weeks, the NI tanks joined more raids. One captured 24 Axis guns during a surprise assault. Another misled scouts, buying precious time for Soviet supply lines. Axis intelligence began overestimating Soviet tank presence. Even German advisors noted unexpected armor resistance. In reports, Romanian troops, rattled by the first encounter, now feared another wave of phantom tanks. But the truth was hidden: these tanks were breaking down, running on fumes, or already destroyed. The illusion had a short fuse. But while it lasted, it was powerful. A final stand, but not a final failure. By mid-October, the Axis finally broke through. The Soviets executed a strategic evacuation, saving thousands. Odessa fell, but not in disgrace. The defenders had held for months under impossible odds. And the NI tanks? They were gone. Most destroyed. Some abandoned. But their legacy outlived the steel. They became a symbol of what desperate minds can achieve when hope is almost gone. Because illusion is still a weapon. The NI tanks weren't the last fake tanks ever used. The British used inflatable tanks in Operation Fortitude. The Germans built wooden decoys to mislead air raids. Even in modern warfare, deception remains a battlefield tactic. But Odessa's NI tanks were different. They weren't built by elites or masterminds. They were built by civilians, machinists, and farmers, with no blueprint and no time. And yet, they worked. Because fear, when aimed precisely, can be more lethal than steel. What happened in Odessa is more than a wartime anecdote. It's proof that the underdog doesn't need to overpower the bully, only to outthink them, at the right moment. And if you think this deception was bold, wait until you hear what the Nazis built out of plywood to fool Allied bombers.